I, I am Don Mercer, and I am 70 years old. 3 years ago, when I was 67, my three children sat me down in the living room of the house I had paid for with 33 years of sweat and sawdust, and they told me it was time to go to a home. They called it a family meeting. They sat on my faded floral sofa, looking at me with a mixture of pity and impatience. Mark, my oldest, the accountant from Tampa, Lisa, the middle child, a nurse up in Orlando, and Steve, the youngest, a sales director in Atlanta. They had gathered around me, armed with glossy brochures showing smiling, gray-haired people playing bingo and walking on manicured lawns. They had rehearsed this. I could tell by the way Mark cleared his throat before launching into his speech about my safety and my future. They didn't see me as a father anymore. They saw me as a problem to solve, a liability to be managed, a loose end to be tied up neatly in a facility where they could visit me on holidays and not worry about me the rest of the time. I looked at my hands. They were resting on my knees, gnarled and swollen, the joints thick with arthritis. These were the hands of a carpenter, a cabinet maker. For 33 years, these hands had shaped wood, sanded it smooth, coaxed beauty out of raw timber. I could run my fingers over a piece of mahogany and tell you its grain, its temper, its soul. When I started, my mentor gave me a hand plane. It was a beautiful tool, perfectly balanced, the blade sharp and eager. I still have it. It sits on a shelf in my new home, an anchor to my past. I can't use it anymore. My hands won't close around the grip properly, and the pain is a constant, low-level thrum that flares into agony if I try to apply pressure. That was the start of the end, really. When I couldn't do the fine work anymore, when the cabinets I built started to show the slight imperfections of an unsteady hand, I had to stop. I lost my trade, my livelihood, my identity, and then my wife left. I was 60. We had been married for 35 years. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, just a slow, quiet fading away. She said she was tired of the sawdust, tired of the tired man I had become, tired of a life that felt small. She moved to Arizona to live near her sister, leaving me alone in the big, quiet house. The silence was deafening. The loss of my work and the loss of my wife created a vacuum in my life, and into that vacuum rushed the well-meaning but suffocating concern of my children. It started small. Phone calls, checking in. Did you take your pills, Dad? Did you eat something besides toast, Dad? Then came the suggestions. Maybe you shouldn't drive at night anymore. Maybe you should get a medical alert bracelet. Their concern slowly curdled into control. They were managing my decline, orchestrating my slow fade into obsolescence. And then came the meeting. Mark handed me a brochure for a place called Sunny Pines Assisted Living. He pointed to the cost, $5,000 a month. We've looked at your finances, Dad, he said in that gentle, patronizing tone that made me want to scream. You get $1,200 a month from Social Security. The sale of the house will cover Sunny Pines for about 8 years. After that, we can chip in. $1,200 a month. That was my income. After a lifetime of building homes for other people, of paying taxes, of raising 3 children, my worth was boiled down to $1,200 a month and a countdown clock on my savings. I looked at the brochure. The people in the pictures looked happy, but it was a plastic, sedated kind of happiness. It was a waiting room for death. I realized then that if I went to Sunny Pines, I would die. Not right away, maybe, but the Don Mercer who built things, who had a life, who had agency, that Don Mercer would cease to exist the moment I walked through those double doors. I would be warehoused. I would be a resident, not a man. I didn't argue. I just nodded and told them I would think about it. They left, satisfied that they had handled the situation. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my armchair, the silence of the house pressing in on me, and I opened my laptop. I started searching, not for assisted living, but for living. I searched for places where $1,200 a month was not poverty, but a decent life. I searched for places where older people were not pushed to the margins. That's when I found a book. It was called You Were Never Meant to Stay. It was about expats, about people who refused to accept the narrative of decline, who packed up and started over in places where the math worked in their favor, where the culture respected age rather than hiding it away. The author talked about Southeast Asia, about Vietnam, Da Nang specifically, a city in the middle of the country on the coast, modern, but still deeply Vietnamese. Expat-friendly, but not a sanitized bubble. I read the book cover to cover in one sitting. It was a revelation. It spoke of a place where $1,000 a month could buy a comfortable apartment, good food, and health care. It spoke of a culture where elders are revered, where family structures are tight, and where life is lived out in the open, not behind closed doors. Da Nang sounded like a dream, but a practical one. It had the infrastructure I needed, hospitals, an airport, reliable internet, but it also had a soul. It had my Key Beach, miles of white sand stretching along the South China Sea. It had the Marble Mountains, ancient limestone karsts jutting out of the earth. It had the Dragon Bridge, a massive yellow dragon that breathed fire and water on weekend nights. It was a city that was alive, and I desperately wanted to be alive again. I spent the next 3 months planning. I didn't tell my children. I sold the house. I sold my truck. I sold almost everything I owned, except for my clothes, a few mementos, and the hand plane my mentor gave me. When the money from the house sale cleared, I put it into a high-yield account. I figured with that and my Social Security, I was more than secure. Then I booked a one-way ticket to Da Nang, Vietnam. I told the kids 2 days before I left. I called another family meeting. We did it over a video call. When I told them my plan, they were furious. Lisa cried, accusing me of abandoning them, of being irresponsible. Mark got angry, his accountant brain short-circuiting at the idea of me moving to a developing country without a proper safety net. Dad, you're 67 years old. You have arthritis. You can't just move to Vietnam, he yelled. Steve was quieter, but he looked at me like I had lost my mind. They tried to guilt me, to scare me, to bully me into staying, but their anger just confirmed what I already knew. They weren't mad that I was leaving. They were mad that I was taking back control. They were mad that their tidy plan for my end-of-life care had been upended. I listened to them, and then I calmly explained that this was my life, my money, and my choice. I told them I loved them, but I was not going to a home. I was going to live. The flight was brutal. 24 hours of travel, my joints screaming in protest. But when I stepped out of the Da Nang airport, the thick, humid air hit me like a physical force. It smelled of exhaust, street food, and the sea. It was chaotic, loud, and incredibly vibrant. I felt a surge of energy I hadn't felt in years. Let me break down the reality of living here, the financial reality that my son Mark couldn't grasp. My Social Security is $1,200 a month. In Tampa, that was a slow death sentence. In Da Nang, it is a comfortable living. I rent a bright, modern one-bedroom apartment with a balcony overlooking the city for $400 a month. That includes internet and water. My electricity bill is about $50. I spend maybe $300 a month on food, and I eat out constantly. A bowl of pho or a plate of com tam from a street vendor costs about $2. Even when I go to a nicer expat restaurant, I rarely spend more than $10. I bought a good quality health insurance policy for expats that covers me completely for about $150 a month. The hospitals here are excellent, modern, and efficient. When my arthritis acts up, I can get a massage or physical therapy for $10 an hour. My total monthly expenses are around $900. I am actually saving money every month on my $1,200 income. The money from the house sale sits untouched, a true safety net, not a drain to pay for a warehouse, but the finances are only half the story. The real transformation has been in how I am treated. In America, as an older man, I was invisible, or worse, an inconvenience. Here in Vietnam, age is respected. It is deeply ingrained in the culture. When I walk down the street, people smile and nod. They call me Bak, which is a respectful term for an older uncle. Shopkeepers offer me a chair while I wait. Young people on motorbikes slow down to let me cross the chaotic streets. There is a sense of community, a web of social connection that I didn't realize I was starving for. I have built a new life here. I wake up early. Before the heat of the day sets in, I walk down to my cave beach and join the locals for their morning exercise. Hundreds of people, young and old, doing Tai Chi, playing badminton, swimming in the warm ocean. I grab a strong, sweet Vietnamese iced coffee, Sia Pe Suada, from a cart for $1 and sit on a plastic stool watching the city wake up. I have made friends, both expats and Vietnamese. We meet for cheap beers and fresh seafood in the evenings. I have purpose again. I can't build cabinets, but I can still teach. I found a local vocational school, and I volunteer there twice a week, helping young Vietnamese men and women learn the basics of woodworking, passing on the knowledge in my hands, even if the strength is gone. I communicate through a mix of basic Vietnamese, pointing, and a translation app on my phone. But the language of wood is universal. It hasn't been completely easy, of course. The language barrier is real and frustrating. The bureaucracy can be maddening. The heat in the summer is oppressive. And I miss my children, despite how things ended. I miss the easy familiarity of my own culture, sometimes. But the difficulties here are challenges I choose to face, not indignities forced upon me. Every obstacle I overcome is a reaffirmation of my autonomy. Last year, Mark and Lisa came to visit. They had spent 2 years predicting my imminent demise, waiting for the phone call saying I was broke or sick and needed to be rescued. When they arrived, they expected to find me huddled in a shack. Instead, I took them to my apartment, clean and cool. I took them to my favorite local spots. I introduced them to my friends. We walked along the Han River at night, watching the Dragon Bridge light up. They saw how the locals treated me with respect. They saw the life I had built on $1,200 a month. The shift in them was palpable. The pity and patronizing concern were gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in their eyes in a very long time: respect. And I think a little bit of jealousy. Mark, stressed and overworked in Tampa, paying a mortgage he can barely afford, looked at my life with a kind of quiet longing. Lisa admitted that I looked healthier and happier than I had in a decade. They realized that I hadn't run away to die. I had run away to live. To anyone watching this, anyone sitting in a quiet house, looking at the math of their retirement and feeling the walls closing in, I want to say this: you do not have to accept the narrative they give you. You do not have to accept being managed, warehoused, or diminished. The world is vastly larger than the options presented to you in glossy brochures. The transition from independence to dependence is not inevitable. You can choose a different path. It requires courage. It requires stepping into the unknown, and it requires leaving comfort behind. But the reward is autonomy. The reward is dignity. My name is Don Mercer. I am 70 years old. My hands don't work like they used to, but my mind is sharp, and my spirit is intact. I live in Da Nang, Vietnam. I'm not a problem to be solved. I am a man living a life that I chose on my own terms, and I have never been more free. Let me tell you about the wood. You see, people think wood is just dead material. They go to a big box store, buy a piece of pine wrapped in plastic, and think that's all there is to it. But wood is a record of a life. Every ring, every knot, every variation in the grain is a story of a year of rain, a year of drought, a harsh winter, or a time of abundance. When you work with it for 33 years, you learn to read those stories. You learn to respect the material. You don't just force a saw through it. You work with its nature. Mahogany, for instance. It's dense, rich, and forgiving, but it demands sharp tools and a steady hand. Oak is stubborn, proud, and will splinter if you don't treat it right. Walnut is a dark, beautiful secret that reveals itself slowly as you sand it down. For decades, my life was defined by my relationship with these materials. I built custom cabinetry for homes all over Florida. I built libraries with floor-to-ceiling shelves that smelled of lemon oil and old paper. I built kitchens where families gathered, the heart of the home, crafted by my hands. There was a rhythm to my days that I thought would never end. Up at 5, coffee black, out to the shop by 6. The smell of sawdust was my perfume. The whine of the table saw, the rhythmic shh of the hand plane. These were the sounds of my productivity, my worth. I provided for my family with the sweat of my brow and the skill of my hands. I put Mark through accounting school, Lisa through nursing school, and Steve through his business degree, all on the wages of a carpenter. I was proud of that. I was the rock. But then the arthritis crept in. It didn't announce itself with a trumpet blast. It was insidious. A stiffness in the morning that took a little longer to work out, a dull ache in the knuckles after a long day of sanding. I ignored it, pushed through it, took ibuprofen by the handful. But you can't outwork a failing body. The joints in my fingers began to swell, twisting like old roots. The pain became a companion I couldn't shake. The day I dropped a beautiful piece of cherry wood because my grip simply failed, that was the day the denial shattered. I looked at the dent in the wood, and I knew, my time was up. The transition from being the provider, the strong man, to being disabled was a psychological violence I wasn't prepared for. When you lose the thing that defines you, what is left? I tried to find other things to do. Let me recount that family meeting in excruciating detail, because it is the crucible in which my new life was forged. It was a Tuesday. I had made a simple dinner, baked chicken and rice, and was settling in to watch a documentary when the doorbell rang. It wasn't just one of them, it was all three. Mark, Lisa, and Steve standing on my porch like a delegation. They came in, refused my offer of coffee, and sat down. Mark, as always, took the lead. He pulled a manila folder from his briefcase. He actually had a folder. "Dad, we need to have a serious talk about your future," Mark began. His voice had that practiced, soothing quality that professionals use when delivering bad news. "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair. "We've been talking," Lisa chimed in, leaning forward, her face a mask of practiced empathy. "We're very concerned about you being here all alone. With your hands and Mom gone, we worry." "I'm fine, Lisa," I said quietly. "I manage." "But what if you fall?" Steve asked. "What if there's an emergency? You're too far from us. We can't get here quickly." Then Mark opened the folder. He pulled out the glossy brochures, Sunny Pines, Autumn Leaves, Golden Horizons. The names were all variations on the theme of fading away. "We've done some research," Mark said. "These are some of the best assisted living communities in the state. They have 24-hour care, activities, meals provided. You wouldn't have to worry about the house or cooking or anything." I looked at the brochures, pictures of people who looked older than I felt, smiling vacantly while someone in scrubs handed them a cup of juice. "How much?" I asked. I knew Mark well enough to know he had done the math. Mark cleared his throat. "Well, that's the thing. They range from $4,000 to $6,000 a month. But Dad, if you sell this house, you'll have a good nest egg." We ran the numbers. The house is worth about $400,000. If we invest that conservatively and combine it with your $1,200 from Social Security, you can comfortably afford Sunny Pines for about 8, maybe 9 years. "And after 8 or 9 years?" I asked. "We'll figure it out then," Mark said quickly. "The point is, you'll be safe." I looked at my 3 children. I saw the people I had raised, the people I had sacrificed for, sitting there calmly calculating how to spend the equity of my life to warehouse me so they wouldn't have to worry. They weren't doing it out of malice. That was the most painful part. They genuinely thought they were doing the right thing. They were operating under the great American delusion that aging is a disease to be managed in a facility rather than a phase of life to be lived. "You want me to sell my home," I said, my voice dangerously soft, "to pay $5,000 a month to live in a room and have someone make me Jell-O until my money runs out." "Dad, you're making it sound awful. It's a nice place," Lisa protested. "It's a waiting room," I said. "I'm 67, Lisa. I'm not an invalid. My hands hurt. My brain is fine." "Dad, be reasonable," Steve said. "You can't stay here forever." "I will think about it," I said, standing up, signaling the end of the meeting. "Thank you for your concern." They left feeling like they had made a breakthrough. I was left feeling like a cornered animal. That night, the anger fueled me. I started researching. Feha. I knew there had to be an alternative to the binary choice of struggle alone in poverty or bankrupt yourself in a facility. I stumbled onto expat forums, I read about people retiring in Mexico, Costa Rica, Portugal, but the numbers didn't always work, or the culture didn't appeal to me. Then I found You Were Never Meant to Stay. The author was a guy who had faced a similar situation, downsized out of a corporate job, facing a meager retirement in the U.S. He detailed his move to Southeast Asia. He broke down the costs, the visas, the healthcare, the psychological shift. He wrote about Vietnam, specifically Da Nang. The way he described Da Nang captured my imagination. It wasn't a sleepy beach town, nor was it a chaotic mega city like Ho Chi Minh. It was a sweet spot, a city of 1 million people, with modern infrastructure, sitting right on the coast, flanked by mountains. He talked about the cost of living in explicit detail. I took out a notebook and started doing my own math, my $1,200 a month. In the U.S., it was below the poverty line. In Vietnam, according to the book and my subsequent research, it was the income of a solid middle-class professional. The geographical arbitrage was staggering. I wasn't poor. I was just in the wrong country. The decision crystallized in my mind over the next few weeks. I contacted a real estate agent. I started selling off the heavy machinery in my shop. The table saw, the planer, the drill press. Every tool I sold was a pang of grief, but it was also a shedding of weight. I was stripping my life down to the studs, preparing for a complete rebuild. The logistics were daunting, but I tackled them with the same methodical approach I used to build a complex cabinet. Step 1, secure a visa. Step 2, figure out banking and how to access my money overseas. Step 3, find international health insurance. Step 4, book the flight. I didn't tell the kids until everything was locked in. The house was sold, the money was in the bank, the flight was booked. I called them on a Saturday morning. I have an announcement, I told them over the group video call. I've sold the house. Mark beamed. Dad, that's great. Did you decide on sunny pines or autumn leaves? Neither, I said. I'm moving to Vietnam. The silence on the call was profound. You could have heard a pin drop in 3 different time zones, then the explosion. Vietnam? Lisa shrieked. Oh, are you insane? You can't speak the language. You don't know anyone there. What about your medical care? I have international health insurance, Lisa. The hospitals in Da Nang are world class. Dad, this is crazy, Mark said, his face red. You're running away. You're making an emotional decision without thinking it through. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you need help? Mark, if I get sick here, I have my insurance. If I need help, I can hire a full-time live-in nurse for $500 a month. Can you do that in Tampa? He stammered, unable to argue with the math, so he pivoted to guilt. We won't be able to see you. You're abandoning your family. I am a plane ride away, I said calmly. And frankly, Mark, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life sitting in a facility, draining my life savings, just so it's convenient for you to visit me on Thanksgiving. The conversation ended badly. They were angry. I was resolute. We didn't speak for a month before I left. Arriving in Da Nang was a shock to the system. The heat, the noise, the traffic, millions of motorbikes flowing like a river. But beneath the chaos, there was an undeniable pulse of life. My first month was hard. I stayed in a cheap hotel while I looked for an apartment. I got lost. I got frustrated trying to buy groceries. I had moments of profound doubt, sitting alone in my room, wondering if my kids were right, if I was just a crazy old man who had made a terrible mistake. But then, things started to click. I found my apartment. It's on the 10th floor of a new building in the An Thuong area, walking distance to the beach, floor-to-ceiling windows, a modern kitchen, a balcony where I sit and drink my morning coffee. $400 a month. I established a routine. That's the secret to thriving anywhere, but especially in a new country. Routine creates a framework for your life. Every morning I wake up at 5:30 a.m. In Florida, I hated waking up early toward the end. Here I love it. The city is awake and vibrant before the sun gets too hot. I walk down to my K beach. It's an incredible sight. The sand is packed with people. Old men playing a game similar to hacky sack, but with a feathered shuttlecock. Women in matching outfits doing synchronized aerobics to Vietnamese pop music. People swimming in the warm, calm water. I joined a group of older men who do a form of slow stretching by the water. We don't share a language. We share nods, smiles, and the shared experience of aging joints. When my arthritis makes a particular movement difficult, they don't look at me with pity. They understand. One of the men, a retired teacher named Min, noticed me rubbing my hands one morning. The next day he brought me a small jar of tiger balm and showed me how to massage it into the joints. It was a small act of kindness that meant the world to me. After my walk, I go to a local market. The colors and smells are overwhelming at first, but now they are familiar. I buy fresh mangoes, dragon fruit, and vegetables. I learned the numbers in Vietnamese, enough to haggle a little, which is expected and part of the social interaction. The vendors know me now. They call me Ong Don, Mr. Don. Let me talk about the financial breakdown again, because it's the part that people back home can't wrap their heads around. My fixed costs: rent, $400, health insurance, $150, electricity, water, internet, $60, groceries, mostly fresh produce and staples, $150, eating out, entertainment, $150, total, 9 and 10. I have almost $300 left over every month from my Social Security alone. I put it in a travel fund. Last year, I took a train up the coast to Hue, the old imperial capital. I spent a week exploring ancient tombs and eating incredible food. I am traveling. I am living. In Florida, I was rationing electricity. The cultural difference regarding age is perhaps the most profound change. In the West, youth is venerated, and age is a condition to be hidden or treated. We segregate our old people. We put them in communities with other old people, out of sight of the vibrant working world. In Vietnam, age is integrated into the fabric of society. Multi-generational living is the norm. Grandparents are revered. They are the anchors of the family. Because of this cultural baseline, older people are treated with a baseline of respect in public that is entirely absent in America. When I go to a coffee shop, the young servers are deeply polite. They use honorifics. I am not an invisible old man, I am an elder. It does something to your posture, to your spirit, to be treated with respect. You start to carry yourself differently. My volunteer work at the vocational school has been my salvation. I found the school through an expat Facebook group. They teach practical skills to young adults from rural areas. I offered to help with their carpentry program. I can't demonstrate the heavy cutting anymore, but I can teach them how to read a grain, how to measure twice and cut once, how to design a joint that will hold for a century. I have an interpreter, a bright young woman named Lynn, who translates my English into Vietnamese. But often, words aren't needed. I watch a student struggling with a chisel. I gently correct their grip, adjust the angle of the blade, and tap it. The wood yields perfectly. The student looks at me, eyes wide, and smiles. In those moments, I am not a disabled old man. I am a master craftsman passing on the fire. I am useful. I have purpose. That is the one thing no assisted living facility, no matter how expensive, can sell you: a genuine purpose. The visit from Mark and Lisa was the turning point in our relationship. They came in February, escaping the mild Florida winter for the tropical heat of Da Nang. I met them at the airport. They looked exhausted, stressed, and older than their years. Mark was constantly checking his phone. Lisa looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I hired a driver to take us to my apartment. When we walked in, I saw Mark's eyes scanning the place, looking for signs of squalor. He saw clean lines, sunlight, and a view of the ocean. Over the next week, I didn't try to convince them of anything. I just showed them my life. I took them to my favorite pho place, where we sat on tiny plastic stools and ate the best noodle soup they had ever tasted for $2 a bowl. One evening, we were sitting at a beachfront bar, drinking cold local beer. The sun was setting, turning the sky into a painting of orange and purple. The breeze was coming off the water. "Dad," Lisa said, staring out at the ocean, "I have to admit, I was wrong. It's beautiful here." "It's not just the place, Lisa," I said. "It's the life. I control it." Mark put his beer down. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "You look good, Dad. You look strong. Your hands, they don't seem to bother you as much." "They still hurt, Mark," I said. "But when your mind is engaged, when you have a reason to get out of bed, the pain is just background noise." Mark nodded slowly. "I'm sorry we tried to push you into that place. We were just scared." They left a few days later. The dynamic had shifted. I wasn't their dependent anymore. I was their father again, a man they respected. Mark actually asked me for advice on a home renovation project he was considering. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. So, why am I making this video? Because I know there are thousands of you out there in the exact same position I was in. You feel like your options are gone. I am here to tell you that they are not. You do not have to accept a life of diminished returns. You do not have to spend your last years rationing medication and waiting for visitors. It is terrifying to pack up and leave everything you know. But what is the alternative? Slowly fading away in a recliner? Paying exorbitant fees to surrender your autonomy? I chose the fear of the unknown over the certainty of a slow death. I chose to bet on myself. When I look at the hand plane sitting on my shelf, the one my mentor gave me, I don't feel sadness anymore. It represents a chapter of my life that was beautiful and fulfilling, but it is closed. I am writing a new chapter now. It's written in a different language, on a different continent, but I am the one holding the pen. I am Don Mercer. I am aging, yes. My body is wearing out, yes. But my spirit is alive. I have my dignity. I have my autonomy. And I have a life that my children are a little bit jealous of. Don't let them put you in a home. Find a new one. Build a new one. The world is waiting for you.